So hi guys, I'm Daniel Steigerwald. I'm a freelancer software developer, mainly open source. And this talk is about my journey of making a new content editable editor, probably, as you can imagine, the worst work possible ever. But everybody loves WYSIWYG, of course, except web developers doesn't like it. Why? How many of you are web developers? Raise your hand, please. Oh, great. And how many of you have experience with WYSIWYG editors? Well, that's probably why you are here. Okay, so let's start with the terrible truth, inconvenient truth, annoying truth. WYSIWYG in browser is terrible. The reason is the API from the browsers there is almost everything broken. I will provide more details later. But the first advice from me, you don't need WYSIWYG. In many cases, don't do that. If you can, use Markdown and everything that. But if you need content table editor, you are probably don't need it again. But I need it. Okay. The good news is that the modern content table editors are much better than they were. It took many years and a lot of work because the amount of edge cases is, you have no idea. It's just terrible. The bad news, the content editable still sucks. It's buggy. You can check issues on GitHub and you will see endless list of terrible bugs. This talk is not about all details because we would spend several weeks here. But if you are more interested in why is making the content editable so hard, you can read this pretty good article. Too long, don't read. Everything except the selection, the API which provides you correct position, everything else must be re-implemented. And it's not so bad to re-implement manipulation with document, but the hard thing is knowing what the user were trying to do. Basically, all editors have to use DOM observer and heuristics. And that's why it's so hard. DOM observer, this is a nice API, but you, as the library author, you never know if the change were made by some component or user itself. And trying to figure it out leads to another heuristics. So, still I am making a new content editable editor. I will explain why. But before that, because it's a very hard decision, probably affecting your next few years of your life to decide to make a new content table editor, I really spent maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks investigating and evaluating the source code, the whole ecosystem of editors to learn and educate myself why it's so hard to make working content table editor. So now a little overview and I will tell you what I learned. So, you probably know CK editor and TinMCA. They are editors probably the most old, 10 years old, 1,000 times rewritten, and they are paid. They works, I believe, if you need making some simple documents, those two editors somehow works. And I can recommend them for simple simple documents, not for super rich documents, not for documents with custom components, or etc. If you need just the formatting, you can use CK editor and TNMCA. What about Draft.js? When Facebook announced that they have they are developing own editor, we all were happy because, oh, Facebook, React, really the best developers. The problem with Draft is its development. It's mainly driven by Facebook needs. So it's somehow open source, but they do not listen, do not hear what the community needs, because the whole team behind Draft.js are 2 people, and they are full working on Facebook features. So Draft is nice, probably one of the best, but if you need anything else, they will not listen to you. Another issue I have with Draft is it's written with Flow, and the Flow just died. The whole developer world moved on TypeScript, because TypeScript just won. Because TypeScript, the Microsoft did a very good job for TypeScript, and with Flow, Facebook just failed. And I will tell you more later, but types are really appreciated for content editable editors. The next one is Slate. Slate was also very promising. Basically, from architecture point of view, Slate is a rewritten Draft. Slightly changed. It has a better plugin, maybe better plugin system, but there was not many inventions. That guy just took Draft and rewritten in own editor. The problem with Slate is there is one developer behind it, and the development is super slow. Still, it's a very nice piece of the software, but without the types, without the real tests, and there are a lot of issues with serious architectural changes, proposals, which probably will be implemented in the next 3-5 years, if ever. So if Slate works for you, use it. It's a good piece of software, but depending on it, it's hard. The special kind of content editable is prose mirror. I would say the code and the attention to details is the best in prose mirror. It's the other editors like Draft or Quill are stealing features from prose mirror, especially for mobile support. But the problem with prose mirror, my problem I have is the source code is totally unreadable, totally. That guy had to invent his own immutability library, own schema, own view layer. So prose mirror is so cryptic and completed that even developers have problems just to make anything except the basic examples. So prose mirror is a masterpiece somehow, but so complicated. The last one I could recommend is Quill, which is another free open source. It's probably the most popular nowadays, but still it's somehow limiting. So I would be very surprised if there would be any other editor than those I mentioned. So how to choose? By features you need mobile support, React support, if you need hierarchical or flat document model, if you need custom components, always check GitHub issues because there's a source of the truth. And also it depends on documentation. Really, content editable is such a broad idea and broad problem. You probably need something like more framework for making content editable, because you probably will not be satisfied with one generic toolbar they provide. You need an open toolbar. From that point of view, the Slate is probably most close, most versatile editor, but as I said, very slow development and a lot of bugs. So, choose by features, but this talk is about making new content editable editor and why. I heard those two emojis were banned on Facebook. I don't know why. Okay, 7 deadly sins of current content editable editors. Horrible source code. When I said horrible, it's really horrible. There are a huge amount of flags or edge cases, and no, except the draft.js, which is written in Flow, all those editors are written without the types. Try to take a look on repo without the types. How many of you are using TypeScript? Would you be available to working on code source without the TypeScript? No, there is no step back, I believe. Limiting architecture. We really want to provide the best UX experience, and for that task we need, as I said, something like framework, and like Quill or even the Prose Mirror. They are very limiting how we can reuse the things. I would say Slate is the best. Still, Slate has its own issues. Bugs are everywhere. No real browser test. I'm working on my content editable editor for 2 months, maybe. It's still not finished because 2 months is not enough time, of course. But I knew from the start I need Puppeteer tests. Do you know Puppeteer? Probably, yes. It's a wonderful piece of software, and I really can't imagine to write content editable editor without the real tests, not some test if my function works as expected. No, I need the real test, and so from the day 1 I have everything covered by Puppeteer. But 5, yes, horrible source code, and it's not clean code. It's just the means. It's not our goal. Our goal is working code. But content editable is a really complicated state machine, and for that task we would like to have the best code possible ever. And last but not least, React. React is winner. I really don't see a point why my content editable editor should provide support for Vue. Vue is a nice library. Still, the best things now happening in the React ecosystem. And the last point is the future. So, I had to decide if I will just rewrite what already exists, or if I will choose a different method for my content editable editor. And the thing is, the browser vendors are well aware of the terrible situation. We need to use the heuristics, etc. And there is some standard. It's called input events, especially before input, which is just panacea and bless for content editable editors. It will tell us what user did with, if user pasting or deleting text or something like that, and we can prevent default action and delegate and handle it with our logic, which is really necessary. And without the before input API, that's what is making content editable so complicated. You know, you need to listen every event, click, select, pass, and do horrible things with that. The bad news is it's not for IE, not for Edge, and not for Firefox yet. And because the Firefox is already working on that standard, and there was a huge political madness around that, then they finally decided, okay, we will go with it first. So now we have the Firefox, soon, Chrome, and Safari. And trust me, that's all support we need, because Internet Explorer is dead, and Edge soon will be built with Chromium. So really, we can leverage this new API. So my editor I'm working on, it's based on completely new API, which has a huge good impact on the code quality and etc. Still, everything must be re-implemented, but we have enough information from browser itself. So it's all about the transformations. Content editable editor Dream, it's based on before input, no DOM observers. Also, we don't need, because it's fresh, new, we don't have to reinvent the wheels. We can leverage React, and mainly we can leverage this beautiful ecosystem of functional programming libraries, which allow us huge simplified code. Why I'm doing the content editable editor? I need it for my own startup. My idea is making the whole internet editable. And it's simple, not possible with current libraries, but it's possible with current APIs. So I had no other choice, so I had to create something. And during that effort, I rediscovered functional programming, which is interesting side effect and outcome for me, because I'm highly pragmatic. Actually, I thought I already know functional programming somehow, because I had a talk about functional programming 3-4 years ago in this conference, funny things. But in these old times, we thought that it's all about the immutability and pure functions. It's all about the immutability and pure functions, but about the composition, and the composition is true goal to understand functional programming. And so, how it started, I needed to, document is the JSON, is the highly nested JSON, and you need transformations across that JSON. And so, what can you do? I will show you something. Pitchy. You probably all knew the immutable JS. We all tried it, and a lot of us realized that the trade-off is not good enough for us. Yes, immutable JS is nice, but you need to serialize the serialized data all the time. So there is a library, Immer. Do you know library Immer? Immer? Yes, there are some people which try to protect the average Joe developer from functional stuff, but I was not satisfied yet. So I was trying to take a look what the functional ecosystem, which is mainly one guy, can provide us. It's readable. It should be full screen. Yes. So this is the code that people write all the time. Nested, spread. It's just boring. Monaco is library from Scala, ported to TypeScript, which allow us to write this code. This is basically lens type checked for any yet typed structure. This is just a little sneak peek what's possible. And this is how started my journey with functional programming, because I said, that's interesting. So I can modify I can have some lenses. Yes, it's easy to understand. Yes, it works. It's full type checked. You probably know already Ramda. Do you know Ramda? The problem with Ramda is not well type checked. And actually this is a problem of almost all functional libraries for TypeScript. The type checking is so-so for the various reasons, but Monocle, FPTS, and IOTS are different. They are 100% type checked. So, going back. It was just a little sneak peek. Then I realized I have a huge amount of nulls and undefined checks, and everybody have probably some personal strict rule. Use null only or use undefined only. Good thing is the better abstraction is option. And then I replaced all code with null and undefined with option. The thing you have seen before is lenses. And then my journey to functional programming can be stopped because I realized, okay, this looks like predicate. Predicate is function which returns on some condition Boolean. So there is several interfaces for that. Predicate, endomorphism, and soon I realized that I'm writing unnecessary code. Then I can leverage something from FPTS libraries. So the advantage of this library, functional programming TypeScript, is it's mature, stable, and beta tested. Because that guy is working on maybe 5-6 years on that, and maybe 6 months ago he made a huge rewrite, but it was a good rewrite because he acquired a lot of information about how it should be done, and I would say it's super stable. The API is the same, just the internal things has been changed. So, code rots, especially on content editable editors, a lot. So for me, how to prevent code rots is do not do OOP. OOP, I mean inheritance and classes, not only mutable states, but it's all about how your code is constructed. And for me, the biggest advantage of functional programming is one general way how the code should be written, composed. Some people say that there are two kinds of programmings: functional programming and free-form programming. Free-form is you have for each and if, and you can use null and return, and you are doing a mundane imperative tasks. And with functional programming, all these codes look boringly same, which is actually a huge advantage. So if you want to learn functional programming, that's all you need. One book, several blogs, and I highly recommend talks from Scott Vlashin and Mark Seaman. They are using F#, but it's almost the same for TypeScript, which was the quite interesting realization for me. I always try to use Elm or OCaml or Haskell, and we don't need it. We don't need it because we have the same abstractions, almost the same restrictions from type system. So I don't desire to try ReasonML anymore because I can use these nice things in TypeScript. It's not how 100% equal, but still it's very good for us. But content editable editor, yes, I know. You can take a look. It's not finished yet, but because I was focused on the hard things first. The hard things is how to properly handling all these Japan, Korea input. It's called EMA, input engines, and how to properly update, how to make it to work with the spell checkers and those nasty details. And finally, this week I'm starting with the operation like enter, etc. Because I already have a model and I know how to. I have a lot of tests for that. So estimation when it should be finished, maybe 1 month or 2 months for the simple documents, and then I will build the whole ecosystem around that, because the world needs new content editable editor, because we have new APIs. We had to leverage TypeScript, and with the TypeScript all the functional programming things. So if you would like to know more about the typed functional programming in TypeScript or Evolu, my editor, just find me on the Twitter and ask me. So thank you for the